Senator from New Hampshire.
Madam President, I want to thank my colleague from New Mexico for his compelling remarks about the importance of passing the Bring Jobs Home Act. I'm here to echo the need to pass this critical legislation, and I'm certainly pleased that we had such a strong vote to end debate on this legislation. I hope we can now come to some agreement and get the same kind of support for moving the bill forward. I'm an original co-sponsor of this common sense bill. As Senator Udall has said, this legislation would end incentives for companies to send American jobs overseas, and it would instead encourage companies to move jobs back to the United States. Believe it or not, when a company moves jobs offshore, it can write off those expenses on its taxes. That just doesn't make sense. The Bring Jobs Home Act would stop forcing taxpayers to foot the bill for companies when they ship jobs overseas. In addition, to encourage companies to move production back to the United States, the bill provides a tax credit for the costs associated with bringing jobs back home. So not only is this legislation the right thing to do, but it also comes at a critical time as our economy struggles to recover. In New Hampshire and across the country, as Senator Udall pointed out, in New Mexico with the closing of the mine in that community, we're still feeling the effects of the Great Recession. Millions of Americans lost their jobs, and too many middle-class families are still struggling to make ends meet. But sadly, even before the recession hit, the American middle class was finding it hard to pay their bills, to pay their mortgage, to find the good jobs that allowed them to have opportunities. A big reason for that was the loss of so many good-paying American jobs that supported the middle class. Too many of those jobs were shipped overseas. Over the last decade, 2.4 million jobs were shipped overseas. And those 2.4 million families supported by those jobs had to find other ways to support themselves. And often they were in jobs that don't pay as well. Well, it doesn't have to be this way. In fact, many companies are now looking to move jobs back to the United States. As production costs rise overseas, these companies want the advantages provided by our American workers, the most productive workers in the world, and the ease of doing business in the United States. I've heard from several companies that have already moved jobs back to the United States, and there are many more who are hoping to bring jobs back home if we have the right policies in place. So let me give you an example. Last year I met with Doug Clark, who's the CEO of a footwear manufacturing company, New England Footwear. When you think footwear manufacturing or shoe factory jobs, you don't think the United States anymore, because while there are still some very good companies that manufacture footwear here, most of those jobs were sent offshore a long time ago. I know that story very well because my father was in shoe manufacturing the whole time that I was growing up. I watched him struggle with the loss of those shoe manufacturing jobs being sent overseas and imports coming in to take the place of shoes made here in America and the jobs that workers here in America held. Today, about 99% of shoes sold in the United States are made abroad. But New England Footwear executives, who have years of experience in the shoe industry, are looking to bring those jobs back home, back to New Hampshire. The company currently manufactures in China, but as costs rise there, Doug believes he can bring higher-paying jobs to the United States, thanks to innovative technology that reduces manufacturing costs. And New England Footwear isn't alone. A Boston Consulting Group survey from last September showed that more than half of large U.S.-based manufacturers are planning or considering right now bringing production lines back to the United States from China. That's up 17% from just 2 years ago. 17%. That's a big increase, a lot of jobs. The Boston Consulting Group projected that production reshored from China and higher exports due to improved U.S. competitiveness in manufacturing could create 2.5 to 5 million American factory and related service jobs by 2020. So we could replace, by 2020, more than the jobs that we've lost in the last decade. And that's the kind of behavior we should be encouraging. That's exactly what the bill before us does. And we know it will work because a 2012 MIT Forum on Supply Chain Management found that providing tax credits for bringing American jobs back to the United States would be one of the most effective ways to accelerate that process, along with other common sense measures like enacting tax reform, which we all agree we've got to do, providing research and development incentives, ensuring a highly educated workforce, and improving American infrastructure. Again, all challenges that I think the majority of us in this body understand have to be done. So I'm very glad the Senate moved to this bill because our priority in Washington must be creating jobs and restoring the American middle class. Over the past few decades, too many Americans have seen their jobs disappear or their incomes fall. The Bring Jobs Home Act is an opportunity to support those families by creating good-paying jobs here in the United States and by helping our economy regain its competitive edge. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.